So first of all, I would like to know, you've been president of the AP for several years. I just would like you to refresh my memory about what was the history of reorientation therapy. When did you start to hear about this new development, and what can you tell me about the first reaction of the APA at that time?
It probably started in the APA in the early 1970s. And at that time, the women's movement was in ascendancy and it tended to overshadow the gay rights issue. But the two seemed to meld as they went on. And there was a time when I couldn't tell the difference between women's rights and gay rights because it involved the same people. The first time it came up, and I was a member of Council. This would have been 1975, because I remember that's when I made the resolution. I made the resolution that being gay was not a mental illness. It was characterological. And it passed the Council of Representatives. And that was the first issue that came up. I also said that with that the APA, if it passes this resolution, will also vote to continue research that demonstrates whatever the research demonstrates. Unbiased, open research was never done.
Yeah.
It was never done. But the resolution that I made in the Council did get adopted, and by a wide margin. In that era, the Leona Tyler principle was paramount, that the APA would never take a position publicly that wasn't supported by scientific evidence, that it had to be scientifically demonstrated. And we abided, the presidents in my era abided by the Leona Tyler principle. All of a sudden, things began to change as things became more political than scientific. The Leona Tyler principle, which was never withdrawn, disappeared. In fact, you can't even find it in the annals of the APA. If I didn't have it, it wouldn't exist as far as they're concerned. But no, I had no idea, none of us had any idea that we were talking about open dialogue, research, unbiased, and the gay rights movement in those days didn't have the kind of militancy it has now. I mean, now it's all or none. In the early years, it was more like, let's see what's happening.
From your experience, when did you see this change of direction in the APA coming?
It started changing pretty drastically by the late 1980s. By the mid-1990s, the Leona Tyler principle was absolutely forgotten. That political stances seemed to override any scientific results. Cherry-picking results became the mode. And the gay rights movement sort of captured the APA. Yeah, it's very interesting the way it happened. The APA bent over backwards to be understanding and open. And it's understanding that it left an open door for people to rush in and use it for other than scientific purposes, for political purposes. It was preceded by a number of issues. It became part of the movement for what one might call diversity. You want to bring all underrepresented peoples into psychology. And this is a very lofty idea on the surface of it. But when it becomes a bias, if I had to choose now, I would see a need to form an organization that would recruit straight white males, which are underrepresented today in the APA.
What happened step by step so that the organization changed like this within 20 years?
We developed a group of psychologists that numbered around 200 to 250 that rotated themselves through all the offices of the APA. When a rule was passed that you couldn't serve more than X number of sessions on consul or on a certain particular office, they would rotate. They would run for another office and then come back to consul. So for years, about 200 to 250 people were running the APA, and they were a very select, inbred group. They were ultra-liberal, and anything that wasn't ultra-liberal was anathema. So that things like questioning some of the statements about gay and lesbian rights was not being accepted. It became a civil rights issue rather than a scientific issue. Now, I believe in civil rights. I was very active in helping gays be accepted in the APA. To this day, I am not opposed to gay marriage. I know I differ with Narth on some of these issues, but nonetheless, my position is that the person is the one who decides what they want to do with their orientation. And if somebody decides to be gay, I respect that. If somebody wants to marry a same sex, I respect that. But I also respect the right to disagree. And that's not allowed. You only hear one side of the issue.
You've been president of the APA for how many years?
No, I was president-elect, then I was president-elect, and then I was president, and then I was past president, okay. And then the APA got rid of me.
Well, you were president during how long?
I was president 79 to 80.
Okay.
I was on the council of APA starting in the early 70s. I was on the board of directors. In the mid-70s, I was elected president-elect in 77. I don't know what the future is because people are dropping their membership in APA. APA is shrinking. The income that they used to get from the special assessment is dried up. So the APA is going through some real changes at this point. What the future will be, I'm not sure. But the clinicians, for example, are disappointed in that the APA has not done for it what it should have been doing with all the millions of dollars they were collecting all those years. What we need to do is have an open dialogue, no holds barred, and see where the research takes us. Right now, certain research does not get funded. The funding agencies cherry pick what they fund. If we have an open dialogue, we'll be much closer in the next 5 years to a resolution to all of this. But right now, we're in turmoil. If anything, the two sides have stiffened their positions.